Thanks, Lasca and Corla. Taoiseach, my question is very, very simple. Will long COVID be included in the terms of reference of the COVID inquiry? Clearly, it's very important if we're going to come to a balanced assessment of mistakes that were made and so on, that we don't just look at the short term, but we look at the long-term implications for hundreds of thousands of people in this country in terms of illness, in terms of isolation, in terms of not being able to work. Even the economic impacts of that are quite severe. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 10 COVID infections result in long COVID, and we have 350,000 people in Ireland suffering from long COVID. The government has utterly failed to organise proper healthcare services for long COVID, such as basic training for GPs to properly diagnose and manage it. It's not recognised as a disability for social welfare, and the government continues to fail to warn the public about the ongoing dangers of contracting COVID through a public information campaign. So again, Taoiseach, very, very simple question. Will long COVID be included in the terms of reference of the inquiry?
Thanks very much. Just in relation to Deputy Tobin's questions, look, I was there in government, both as Taoiseach and Taoiseach, for that very dark period, which was the pandemic. And these were very difficult decisions to make. Everyone can be an expert in hindsight. We could only make decisions based on the information available and the advice that was put to us by experts. I've no doubt that the lockdowns saved lives. I'm absolutely certain that the vaccine programme saved a lot of lives. And we see that from the most recent OECD report, which shows that Ireland is one of only a handful of countries in which there were no excess deaths during that period. Only New Zealand, Iceland and Norway outperforming us. But of course the lockdowns had negative effects. And I was among many people in government who was very clear about my concerns about the negative effects of lockdowns, not just on people's jobs and businesses, but also delayed and deferred diagnoses, which the Deputy raised, which did happen. Housing construction, we lost thousands of houses because of the housing construction lockdown. Even something like Garda numbers. If we hadn't closed Templemore, there'd be 1,000 more Gardaí today. So yes, these things had real consequences, but they were difficult decisions. It was never a case of choosing between the right option and the wrong option. It was choosing between option A, B and C, all of which had pros and cons. And often those decisions were finely balanced. The public health advice, more often than not, was for deeper, longer, stricter lockdowns. And that was often the view of the opposition too. Indeed, some even flirted with the bizarre zero COVID policy, which has proven to be the worst option, or among the worst options, when you see the effects that occurred or certainly not a sustainable option, as it was abandoned by all the countries that attempted it. In relation to Deputy Muraku's questions on the terms of reference of the COVID inquiry, I'm going to consult with opposition leaders this week. Had hoped to do so in December, but my diary just wasn't able to do it because of the amount of other obligations I have, particularly in relation to foreign travel. I hope that'll be able to go ahead this week. We'll share the draft terms of reference with opposition parties and discuss their views on the composition of them. I'm not, unfortunately, going to be in a position to engage personally with all the different individual groups and stakeholders. We'll never get this commission up and running if it was possible to schedule that many meetings. I would, but I just can't. But we will find a mechanism to consult interested groups and stakeholders. Just in relation to health service capacity, I agree that our health service needs more capacity, not least because of our rising population, our ageing population, and the development of new treatments. But what Deputy Boyd-Barrett didn't acknowledge is that's exactly what this government has been doing now since 2020, in the 3 or 4 years since we've been in office. So we've 20,000 more staff in our health service now than we had in 2020. Yes, there are people leaving, but there are way more people joining, 20,000 more in fact. We've 1,000 more consultants than we had in 2020. We've 1,000 more hospital beds than we had in 2020. We've more ICU beds, and yes, you're right, we're going to need a lot more. In terms of nurses, we're now in the top 5 in the Western world when it comes to practicing nurses per head, even higher when it's practicing nurses per bed. And for the first time that I can remember, in the most recent statistics, we're now around average in terms of the number of doctors that we have. We had been below average previously, and there had been pay increases, and we're in negotiations with public service unions about further pay increases. We would have liked to have that agreed back in October, November, but hasn't been possible. I do think that the utopian system that, or perhaps the ideal system to be fair, that Deputy Boyd Barrett describes sounds very like the NHS to me, which might have been a model that would have worked 50 or 100 years ago, but doesn't work in the modern world. And what do we see in the NHS? Longer waiting lists and waiting times for patients, lower life expectancy, worse outcomes when it comes to stroke and heart attack, for example, and lower pay for the staff. So that is definitely not a model that we'll be following. And in the election, we'll be encouraging people not to vote for Sinn Féin and for left-wing parties, precisely because that's what they want to do in Ireland, and it's not a good thing. In relation to long COVID, the HSC identified early in the pandemic the need for a national service for long COVID and to set up a multi-specialty, multidisciplinary team to develop an interim model of care under the auspices of the Chief Clinical Officer. The model of care is now being implemented, building on existing service provision, in addition to establishing new services across GP, community services and acute hospitals to ensure a national service is in place for those who need it. Funding for the model of care has been increased to 6.6 million this year. At present, there are 6 long COVID clinics and 7 post-acute COVID clinics that are operating nationally. And what I might do, just in the interest, well it's quite a long reply, but I'll continue for it now. The clinics currently operate in St Vincent's, Beaumont, and the post-acute COVID clinics operational under the new model of care will be in the Mater and Connolly Hospital in Blanchardstown. In addition, Tala, James's, CUH, UHG and Limerick are operating combined post-acute and long COVID clinics, and the HSC is working with Letterkenny to have a more definitive timeline around their anticipated launch date. Recruitment, which includes consultants in the areas of infectious disease, respiratory medicine, psychiatry, neurology and allied health professionals, and clinical psychologists and admin is underway. To date, 66 WTE primary notification numbers have been issued across all of the post-acute and long COVID clinics. And as of the 8th of September last year, 46 whole-time equivalent posts had been followed. And I think deputies would appreciate that long COVID is an emerging area of medicine and expertise, and still so much that we don't know about it.